Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. We go to the phones. Scott Braddock, Editor Quorum Report, joining us, getting us caught up to date with all that is Texas news. Scott, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. I'm reflecting this morning on, and still, I'm sure you've talked about it here on KFYO, the news about Kobe Bryant was so stunning yesterday, and it cut across it. I saw Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives. None of that matters when something like that happens. And I see people sharing their thoughts about him and his career, his evolution as somebody that we all kind of watched grow up right in front of us, and made such a difference in the world. And I was thinking about, and I posted this on my Twitter earlier, about the fact that there he was with his daughter on this helicopter. Yeah. And, Chad, I don't know about you, but I think about, my daughter, who's 18 now, and if we were on that helicopter and it was going down, they would find me between her and the ground, right? I would not hesitate to be there, right? I mean, it's really emotional. I was thinking a friend of mine, I know this is not why you're having me on, but I did want to say something about it. A friend of mine said, a father and daughter, that's a real special relationship. And, a woman, her whole life and the way that her life is shaped is really reliant on her relationship with her father. Her kids need a father, and daughters really need a father who's there for them. All indications were that he was such a loving father, somebody who really cared about his little girl. And it just breaks my heart. And that's the place I'm in emotionally this morning. And yesterday I was kind of just stunned by it. Obviously everybody's stunned at that news. That is not what we expected, right? On a Sunday, and all the reactions coming in. My heart just goes out to their family. Yeah. Politically, what's going on in the state? Well, I'm getting ready to head to Fort Bend County. You and I have been talking about it.
You're going back, huh?
Right? Oh, yeah. Listen, I put all the miles possible on that truck during campaign season. You know that. I've been out to see y'all in Lubbock when there were races going on, go to the Panhandle if that's what's happening. Houston's an easier drive for me than those places from Austin. But this is being portrayed as the bellwether for what's going to happen in 2020. You and I have talked about how I don't think that's really the case. And the Democrats may have overplayed their hand here. A friend from Houston was saying that only the Texas Democratic Party could set up Republicans to be able to brag about winning in Katy, which, they shouldn't be able to do. Republicans should just win in Katy. I guess saw another email this morning from Beto O'Rourke saying that we've got to get out here and stump for the Democrat. It's your last chance to vote is tomorrow. He's stumping for Eliz Markowitz, the Democrat, who's going up against Gary Gates, who's the Republican. You did have the governor send in his strike force, which you and I were texting about last week. The governor saying that he was, sending buses of, Republican activists and others to get down to Fort Bend County and block walk for the Republican. We can't lose this seat. It's sort of being, played out as this grand battle in what I think, Chad, and, again, not in the business of making predictions, but I would think, just based on the numbers, that the Democrats, while they have some enthusiasm, the Republicans do have the numbers, and I would expect Gates to win by at least 5 or 6 points, something like that. I also did have a Democratic friend tell me that they would eat a hat. That was the quote. They would eat a hat if Gates wins by more than 5 points. So I did find, I'm not going to be the guy who says, here's a hat, you got to eat it. So I did go find a cookie and cake place here in Austin that will make custom cookies. I've had them made up blue little cowboy hats for Democrats. And I'll be dropping that off at my friend's office.
No, I think you need a hat.
It's shaped like a hat. Yeah, it's a cowboy hat.
No, we need a real hat. Come on, let's get the clicks going.
If you want to go all that way, you go for it. I'm going to be a little more charitable here. Everybody wins. And hey, if by some chance they win, I'll eat the cookies, so they look great.
There you go. Now, okay, you did. You pretty much predicted last week that we would start seeing these articles about. This is a bellwether, that this is going to mean Texas is going this way or that way.
Right.
It seems like from the reporting you've done and just everything that I've seen, this is going to be a fairly easy win for Republicans. Do you think that if it is a fairly easy win for Republicans, and you had mentioned it backfiring maybe, Do you see that backfiring big time on the Democrats, that, oh, here we go again, or is this going to be all forgotten about by the time the election rolls around?
I think that for the most part, it'll be forgotten about by the time we get to the November elections, and it won't really matter at that point. But here's why it does matter, and this is why this sort of hype and this sort of narrative does matter. If the Democrats lose, they've made such a big deal about it, Chad. I mean, we have Beto O'Rourke down there block walking almost daily for the Democrat. You had Julian Castro block walking. Mike Bloomberg was doing the same. You had Joe Biden endorse the Democrat in this race. You had Elizabeth Warren, push in on this as well with an endorsement. And so this has captured the nation's attention because of their involvement. And if they lose, then that means that it may cause the Democratic money that is supposed to be flowing into the state and is already flowing into the state to try to flip the Texas House from Republican to Democratic. That money may slow down a little bit, because if people are going to look at this, the Democratic donors will say, wait a minute, y'all told us that you could win that seat. And if it's and I think that Republicans want to send a message here. I mean, they talk about moral victories, Chad, it always makes me laugh, because winning is winning, losing is losing. There's so much winning, that's going on. If the Republicans win, to steal the phrase from the president, if they win bigly, if they win by double digits, which I don't expect, but if they win, by 7 or 8 points, the Democratic donors are going to look at that and say, wait, this wasn't even a thing that we had a chance at. If, on the other hand, and I'm not making the argument for moral victories, but if, on the other hand, Democrats in that area, which is still pretty Republican, if they can come within 2 or 3 points, well, then they still have the same kind of argument that they already had, right? In 2018, in counties like Collin County, Denton County, in Fort Bend County as well, Williamson County, Hayes County, races that used to be 20-point races were suddenly 2 and 3 point races. Yeah. Well, that lends itself to an argument that in November, when turnout is much higher and there's a presidential election going on, that Democrats might be able to make a difference in those places. So, moral victory aside, whatever. If they're within 2 or 3 points, I think you can still count on a lot of Democratic money flowing in, maybe even more than we would have otherwise seen.
Scott, it is it's time for it's not a yearly debate, but maybe every 2 to 4 year debate, and that is the Log County Republican Party?
Log Cabin Republicans.
Yeah, it's not a yearly debate. It's just every now and then a debate that pops up. Tell us what's going on with the GOP on this one.
Interesting. Yesterday, the state Republican executive committee member from Galveston, J.T. Edwards, reached out to me, and he said that he's going to be making this push coming up this weekend at the SREC. That's the governing body for the state Republican Party. He wants the Log Cabin Republicans, gay Republicans, to have a booth at the convention. We like you say, every convention or almost every convention, this comes up. Should they be allowed to be what they call a coalition partner? I would say this is sort of a test for whether the majority party is willing to accept all the help they can possibly get in fighting back against ascendant Democrats in this year's elections. Was what we were just talking about with them trying to flip the Texas House. Edwards says, look, we need all hands on deck. If these folks are 99% on board with the conservative agenda, and there are some folks who are in the evangelical wing of the party who don't agree with, as they would put it, their lifestyle, he says that doesn't matter. We got to beat the Democrats. And it's interesting. Dan Crenshaw, who's a congressman from the Houston area, who's risen to fame, one of the rising stars in the Republican
rock
Party.
Star Republican, really.
Yes, people love this guy, and even Democrats have reason to like him lately. Right? He's been talking about how climate change is not something that Republicans can ignore. We talked about that a little bit last week. And in this story, Edwards, the SREC member that I mentioned, he pointed to a letter that Crenshaw wrote on Saturday in which he said, quote, disagreements over certain policy issues should not be enough to exclude a group that shares the vast majority of conservative governing principles. He said that they were there for me. These Log Cabin Republicans were there for me in 2018 when I ran for office, working hard, playing a significant role in our grassroots campaign. His predecessor in that seat, that's Congressional District 2 in the Houston area, Ted Poe, who, by the way, was a member of the Freedom Caucus. Remember that? Right. Ted Poe, very conservative Republican, who also said he wrote a letter as well to the party chairman, James Dickey, saying that, look, the Log Cabin Republicans, they were one of the first groups he met with when he first ran for office years ago, and they were key he said, in his campaign to unseat a Democrat because they were very good organizers. They were, very happy to get out and work to elect Republicans. This is something where the chairman has to walk sort of carefully because, look, I would not expect this weekend for the SREC to vote to put the log cabin Republicans on the floor of the convention with a booth. However, because I'm not sure the party's there just yet. Just sort of looking at the makeup of the state Republican Executive Committee, there was a forum recently where Dickey and his challenger, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, retired Lieutenant Colonel, they were asked about this. And what happens on the SREC, Chad, is if the body, if the members of that committee, if they deadlock on this, if they're tied, then the chairman has to cast a tie-breaking vote. That's what happened when Speaker Strauss was censured, and Dickey and his vice chair voted to put it over the top. Let's say they're evenly divided coming up on Friday or Saturday this coming weekend. They were pressed about it by some activists. Dickey and West were both asked, how would you vote? Put them on the spot. And Dickey said, look, and he kind of treaded carefully. He said, we do not have to soften our positions at all to expand our tent. So that kind of sounds like he's sort of open to it, right? He said, quote, we can welcome everyone who agrees with us. It's not us welcoming people who then want us to change our position, is what he said. Then West sounded a little bit more like some of the, I guess what I would say, more evangelical, leaders of the Republican Party in the past. What he said was, if the group is coming in, and he said if, and he pointed this out to me on social media, although I'm not sure how he hasn't formed a position about the log cabin Republicans just yet. I mean, I think everybody knows that they'd like to change the platform of the Republican Party a bit. West said that if they want to, quote, infiltrate and undermine our party's platform, then his vote would be simple. He said it would be no. So we'll see how this goes this weekend, but I'm not sure, Chad, if the Republican Party is just there yet. I think Edwards makes an interesting argument about saying, hey, we need everybody to beat the Democrats in this election. Question is, do they want to sort of discourage this one group that is known to be good organizers from getting involved?
What are they trying to change within the party platform?
They would like it to be more opening to, as they would put it, their way of life, and sound a little bit more like the Democrats on the issue of gay marriage and all of that. And I do think that there is obviously you've been to these conventions, you know how it works. There's heated debates about all this different stuff, whether it's immigration, marijuana, for example. The Republican Party platform is nothing like it was when it comes to legalized pot. Even a few years ago. Now you have sort of the libertarian wing of the Republican Party coming in and saying we shouldn't be punishing people just because we're mad at them. Instead, we should only punish people because they've actually hurt somebody else. A lot of this has to do with this criminal justice reform effort. So to say that it's, in all respect to Colonel West, it's I don't think legitimate to say that you can't have anybody coming in who wants to alter the party platform. Altering the party platform is a healthy thing that happens at every convention.
Right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens and how that plays out.
We'll watch it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One more thing that I want to get to before we let you go, Scott. The lieutenant governor creating a bit of a brouhaha on the end of last week. When he talked about how possible election results may go, and if they do go one certain way, we may change up some rules in the Senate.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time here, so I'll try to make this short. The lieutenant governor said that he's willing to lower the threshold for how many senators it takes to bring legislation to the floor, and he said he was concerned that some Republicans might lose their races. Chad, does that sound a little different from what he has said about President Trump doing better in Texas than he did in 2016? On the one hand, he's saying President Trump may win Texas by double digits, better than 9 points as he beat Hillary Clinton by in 16. At the same time, he's saying that some of his Republican senators are probably in trouble. Now, we do know that one of the GOP senators, Pete Flores from South Texas, it's probably a given that he's going to lose that seat. That's a Democratic seat, and it was won in a special election. Not all that unlike the Democrats are trying to pick off a seat in a special election in Fort Bend right now, right? But it could be that at least one other Republican might be in some danger. I would look to North Texas. Perhaps Jane Nelson has some reasons to think that she has to, run a strong race because Beto O'Rourke did well in Denton County. And then I would also look at the fact that Brandon Creighton down in southeast Texas could end up with a real race because there were only 2 counties in Texas, Chad, that were within 1 point of each other in the presidential race in 16. Hayes County, just south of Austin, and Jefferson County, where Beaumont is, and Beaumont takes in Creighton's seat. And then you also have the possibility that one of Patrick's allies on the Democratic side might have a problem in his primary. Eddie Lucio, who's a pretty conservative Democrat from South Texas, he's often aligned with Lieutenant Governor Patrick on, he was a Democratic vote to move the bathroom bill forward. He's with him on pro-life issues, et cetera. One of the guys who's running against Lucio, his whole campaign is that Lucio is Dan Patrick's Democrat. And so if that guy wins, I don't think he's coming to Austin to make deals with Dan Patrick. So Patrick's, he's a very astute political observer. He looks at polls better than anybody I know. And he's at least worried right now that in the fall, the Republicans in the Texas Senate might not fare as well as some of us were thinking they would.
All right. I guess we'll keep an eye on that as well. Scott, tell folks what they can find at Quorum Report.
We are very focused on this Fort Bend race. I'll be heading there this afternoon to check it out and bring you all the latest there at quorumreport.com. And, of course, anything that's happening with your state government, we'll let you know in real time if you sign up for our email alerts. They're at quorumreport.com.
All right. As always, Scott, appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, my friend. Talk soon.
That's Scott Braddock, editor, quorumreport.com.